Welcome to the Takeoff Podcast, the go-to construction podcast for construction professionals seeking inspiration, education, or motivation for the next steps in their career. Each Monday, you'll be joined by me, Mick Donaghy, Managing Director of Gedden Executive Recruitment and a respected name from the industry. A construction leader, a business owner, or someone in the thick of the action. The whole premise of this podcast is for you to get something from it. An idea, a connection, a mentor, whatever it is, I hope you get it. And I hope you enjoy the show. Without further ado, let's get into it. So question 3 is, why are so many construction companies going bust at the moment? So we're seeing it all around. I actually fatally done my predictions for 2024. And I actually, because I've been really, really busy this year, actually recorded it on the day that I released it. I said, I don't think there's going to be so many construction companies that go bust this year. And then literally 2 hours later, I'm getting phone calls, from people from different builders saying, hey, I'm looking for something. Can you help me out? So tell me, why is it and where do you think the market's going?
So in 2015, I moved to the Gold Coast. Builders were trading insolvent then. Like Summer and Staff went broke. It was like this crazy, I was wondering, am I going to be a builder's CA? So the person that you're talking about calling you right now, that was me. In 2015, I was going to interviews with builders and I had people saying to me, how would you make a margin if we bid a tender at -4%? And I was walking out of interviews going, this is not what I'm doing anymore. I'm not doing it. So that was a really big catalyst in me changing direction. Why are they going broke? So 2017, they brought in the Building Industry Fairness Act. I mean, I'm talking about Queensland here, but it's not just Queensland, right? Yeah. There's also trust accounts have been brought in New South Wales. Western Australia has had a massive overhaul with security of payment. They've got trust accounts and retention trust accounts and trialled things. They've trialled things in government. So everybody around the country has been trying to work out, what do we do with security of payment? And even the federal government has tried to say, we're going to bring in a federal regime for security of payment. It's this important to small business that people get paid. Like, we need to secure people's payments. But by putting protections in place, the commercial cash flow strategies that companies like building companies have used since day dot to float their cash flow are being taken away. Holding retention in your bank account and retention being taken at a head contract level as well. I think retention just needs to go. To me, it is the most ridiculous situation ever that you would just say to, the presumption would be that you don't get paid in full for a whole year just in case something goes wrong.
So great having you on the show, because then I can just ask these questions. Hopefully there's someone else out there who I feel stupid sometimes, So what does that actually mean then?
Yeah. So retention is where you have a contract for $1 million with a builder. 5% of that will be held back from you as security in case you have a default or you don't perform your contractual obligations.
Right.
So retention sits aside, stays in the builder's bank account, or stays in retention happens to builders as well, gets retained from their payments that they get. And then at practical completion, they get half of it back. And then for the defects liability period, the person who holds the retention keeps 2.5% until the end of the DLP to make sure that you don't have any defects and you've performed your obligations. So if you go to JB Hi-Fi and you buy a TV, you're paying for it before you're walking out. You've got a 12-month warranty, and if something goes wrong, you take it back, you get a new telly, or they fix it or whatever. If you're in construction, you just don't pay the person who gives you the goods and services until 12 months later, and you're satisfied that it's not going to break.
Yeah, that's so. You know what? That's so interesting. So they're like putting down like a deposit nearly it's kind of like that. They're basically, the subby is giving up 5% of their cost, and that's being held over them until they finish the job, and then they'll basically say, we'll give you it back, but realistically they're just never going to give it back, are they?
That Mick, they take 10% of every payment claim. So you imagine GST gets taken off every payment claim till 5% of the contract sum. So the retention is front loaded at the start of the job when you're the one trying to, you've got to outlay a month and a half worth of work before you see a payment, at least. It's usually 2 months, 2 to 2.5 months worth of payment. If you're not getting paid for unfixed plant equipment, like say you're a blocky and you're supplying the bricks and the blocks, you're paying your supplier right at the pinch point where you're hoping the builder might pay you as well. But they're taking 10% of every progress claim. And so the bank comes in at a head contract level and goes, we're going to value the amount of work carried out for the principal. The principal tells the builder, no, you've only done $1 million worth of work. You haven't done 1.5 that you've claimed. So we're going to short certify the build. And then the builder's going to come up with the money to pay the subbies. So what they do is they value down the subbies' claims. So this is not, the builders aren't the villains in this situation, 100%. The builders have a decision tree to stay alive when their house is on fire, and it can happen so quickly. So to backtrack to your question as to why is this happening now, it's a really bad perfect storm. But the retention trust accounts that were being bought into projects originally with government, and then it was going to be private jobs over 10 million, and then it was going to be private jobs over 3 million, but they delayed that. The government delayed bringing it in for that. These jobs over $10 million at a head contract level, the retention doesn't get paid to the builder. It gets put in a retention trust account. So the builder is having 10% of every progress claim held from them and put in the trust account. And the subbies are also having 10% of every progress claim held from them and put in this trust account.
Right, guys, so I'm absolutely pumped to say the Takeoff podcast is proud to be sponsored by RIB Software, the company behind some of the leading estimating software in the entire planet, including Costex, Candy, CX, and more. So firstly, if you didn't know, RIB are a powerhouse at providing innovative software solutions to the construction and engineering markets. They have over 500,000 users globally, are known universally as a solution provider for your entire project lifecycle, from planning to construction and beyond. RIB solutions help to ultimately connect people, processes, and data, so your project comes within budget, on time, and to the quality desired, all whilst reducing your business's carbon footprint. All this stuff matters, and RIB has the solutions. So if you're interested in finding out more, get on over to rib-software.com, reach out to your local team and quote Takeoff Podcast. For every listener who buys a subscription of RIB Costex, they will provide one free online training course. Okay, guys, back to the episode.
Whereas before, that money used to sit in the builder's bank account for their cash flow.
This feels like a very corrupt industry at times, you know, like...
Yes.
Who runs construction? Where is this all coming from? You know, is it the banks? Is it the developers? Like, everyone seems to be, you know, getting it tough. I do speak to builders, and they sound stressed. They just sound like they hate their job most of the time. And in exactly the same thing for subbies. It's like stress just constantly gets pushed down, and it's like, no, you accept that, you accept that, you accept that. So why is it this way?
It's the bargaining power, because if you look at resi contracts, homeowners pay deposits to builders. So this is a commercial thing. This is because subbies would cut each other's throat on price and trip over each other to sign up to contract terms. They didn't ask for deposits. They didn't negotiate any terms whatsoever. They just went, please give me work. And builders went in and tendered at -4% margin as recently as the last decade, right? So that was happening in the lead up to COVID. COVID hits, material price increases go through the roof, and retention trust accounts come into projects more than $10 million in Queensland. Builders that were affected by that, some of them aren't around anymore. But the other thing that no one really talks about is the minimum financial report requirements. And again, I'm talking about Queensland, where you have to keep net tangible assets or cash at bank to have a license category for a certain revenue turnover. So if we talk about GCB, they were in the 120 million plus category, right? If you try and find a builder down at Gold Coast that has a revenue category more than 120 million, now, it is so difficult because to have the net tangible assets, so real property, trucks, or cash at bank, just to be able to hold the license. So for me, I've got a project manager's license for QBCC. If I want my company to have a license, I have to put $46,000 into a bank account and leave it there. Can't touch it. It's got to be in there. Either that or I've got to have some other asset just to hold the license, Mick. So where you've got a regulator who's trying to get builders to not trade insolvent and to, be financially robust, but they're making it so difficult to get them into categories to be able to trade and make money because they can't make use of the money that they've actually got. They default on their financial reports.
Guys, I'm interrupting this podcast today to give you some information as to what I actually do every single day. So I own and operate a business called Get In Executive Recruitment. We're a specialist boutique recruitment company, and we specialize purely in the pre-construction and commercial construction markets globally. We're really well known and respected for our work in estimating, cost management, quantity surveying, and contract administration. Because we're hyper niche, we we don't have millions of candidates. We don't really even have thousands. But more times than not, we have the right candidate for the right job at the right time. Unlike a lot of recruitment agents out there, we are super experienced in what we do. We understand the market, we understand what makes our clients tick and our candidates tick too. Each and every single assignment we work on undergoes an extensive executive search process. It's robust and it works 100% of the time. We've also got a team of 5 researchers who map our markets out globally within our niche. They're amazing. They allow us to work fast, which saves our clients time and money too. So if you're interested in our process, drop us a message. Now back to the episode. This is nearly like, because I do speak to different people from different parts of the industry. So residential, it's different. Infrastructure, it's different. But this is commercial, where the heart of the failure lies. It's how commercial contracts are put together, essentially. So for high rise, office blocks, car showrooms, whatever it is, that part of the market is really the big bone of contention. It's the cesspit, should I say? So why can't we learn from this to say, well, this doesn't really work? The client surely wants their project built. So what's the point in having, all this distress go through the whole sort of supply chain?
Yeah, it's a passing down of liability thing. So if I always try and put myself in someone else's shoes, right? So if you're the subby, you put yourself in the builder's shoes. The builder's competing against other builders, and the head contract is going to require them to do all these things. So the builder has all the same pain points the subbies have. They don't have the labour on the payroll. So they are effectively going to project manage now, and they have the ability to pass on some liability down to the subbies, which is why the subbies end up with the worst, in my opinion, end of the stick. But if you're the principal, say, for example, I'm a landowner, say I'm the Department of Defence, and I want to go and do the Shoalwater Bay facility. I just want to contract that out. For me, in government, to be able to actually get money for unexpected additional costs, I have to go through so many levels of signatories to get my budget changed, and maybe go to ministers and things like that. So you can understand as a landowner, when someone says, hey, I just want someone who can do the whole package for me. Can you do it as a D&C? And can you take on all the risk for site conditions, contaminated land? Like if you find asbestos, that's on you, right? But builders then compete in a tender pool. So they don't make allowances for site conditions, inclement weather, because they're competing in a really competitive environment for this job. And then they take on conditions they really shouldn't have. Whereas maybe the principal was prepared to pay overs to know that it was covered, like it was 100% covered. But the builders made the executive decision or the unilateral decision to say, I'm not going to actually have a budget for that. I'm just going to go in heaps keen. I'm going to roll the dice and hope that I can pass it down to the subbies. So we had a contract we negotiated for a subby recently where they were building a Bunnings, and the builder was not entitled to EOTs for inclement weather, was not entitled to anything for latent conditions, had found asbestos on the site and had to deal with it. The job was already delayed 5 months, and they weren't updating the program, because if they did, they would be admitting Bunnings that they would be late 5 months, whatever it was. And we tried to find a practical way that we could get our guy, who was a plumber, out of having to deal with these site conditions. And we just ended up excluding any excavation. So we're just like, you just get your earthworks guy to do that. It's just not included in our scope. So you can see how, if you are actually aware of things because you're reading your contract and going, okay, this is what the owner wanted. The owner was like, hey, I'm prepared to pay. I just want you to cover everything. The builders are not pricing everything for contingencies into these jobs because they don't know what to price. How do you price something if there might be asbestos? Like, we could be talking about having to remove hundreds of thousands of cubic meters of dirt and dealing with it as contaminated fill and things like that. So it's a really difficult situation. And then when I was working with principals and developers in the last 2 years, they would say, I want to give my builder a cost plus contract. Like, I want to be fair. I want to give them a cost plus contract, and I want to give them a big fat deposit so that they've got their skates on. And then suddenly, shoes on the other foot for me, and I'm going, whoa, hang on a second. We can't go and give a builder in this climate $1 million deposit and a cost plus contract. Like, just hold the phone. Let's talk about this in a more practical way. And the client's saying to me, no, I'm saying that builder could take your $1 million down the road, finish that job down there, and then close his doors tomorrow. And you're going to be furious with me for not warning you about this. So you've got developers who have the bank on one side saying, I want a tripartite agreement so that if you go broke, Mr. Developer, I can step in and finish this job. And then you've also got the developer's lawyer saying, let's be careful here. Like, I need to quarantine your liability. And then if you're the builder's lawyer, you're going, well, anything I've got up the chain, I need to protect you from down the chain, which is why the liability gets passed down. And then if you're the subby's lawyer, you're going, who else can we work for? Let's just triage this and get you a better job to get on.
Sounds like the lawyers are the only ones doing well out of this. I don't know.
I don't know about doing well, but they're busy and stressed. Yeah. Particularly when you've got a client who rings you and says, hey, look, my builder went broke. I'm in the hole $2 million. That's the worst phone call you can get.
Before you go today, guys, I'm just going to ask you to do one thing. Can you please go to Apple right now or Spotify right now and just give us those 5 stars? Hit that 5-star button. It makes such a difference you wouldn't believe. The whole idea of this show is to inspire, educate and motivate our listeners, and we can only do that if we're getting the best guests. The best guests want to see data, they want to see information, they want to see how many listeners that we get, and so all of this stuff is really, really important. So if you can just literally go and do that today, if you enjoy the show, just go and hit that 5-star button. It makes such a difference. I hope you've enjoyed the show. We're going to continue to push this out there every Monday, so if you can, hit that 5-star button, and if you can't, even share it with a friend. Go on to WhatsApp, flick it on to your crew. Guys, thank you so much for listening. On to next week.